It's a bit embarrassing to admit, but I kind of have a lot of yarn, like too much yarn if I'm being honest. So I thought because of this, I will not buy any yarn until more than half of this collection is depleted. To start getting rid of the yarn, I thought it would be cool to do a whole bunch of scrap yarn projects, even though I know this is not scrap yarn, it's just an excess amount of yarn. But if you have scrap yarn that you're trying to get rid of or trying to think of ways to use it, then you can use the same projects as I'm going to be doing here. I also thought it would be a fun little challenge to see how many pieces I could come up with the yarn that I have now, instead of thinking of a piece and then going out to buy some. For this first episode, we'll be starting with clothing. There's a lot of fun clothing you can make with extra yarn, skeins, or scrap yarn, but for this video, I'm only going to be doing 4 pieces, or at least attempting to do 4 pieces. The first idea that I have is just a basic scrap yarn sweater. You just take whatever scrap yarn you have and make a sweater out of it. Pretty simple. The next idea is actually based off of this Unif cardigan that I saw on the website. I thought it was so cute, but it says it's originally $238. It's sold out, but even then, instead of buying that, I could just make it myself, you know? And then the last piece that I'm thinking of is just a basic granny square sweater. I've always wanted to make one of these, but I just never did, and I think this is one of the perfect ways to use up a whole bunch of yarn. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get started on these projects. These are the colors I'm thinking about so far for the granny square sweater. This sweater is not planned whatsoever, besides the fact that I want to make the sweater, like a granny square sweater. But the colors are not planned at all, so I just went through my closet for some yarn, and these are the ones that kind of stood out to me. So I'm gonna go ahead and start making some granny squares, and then obviously this might not be enough yarn for them, but I'm just gonna choose random yarn as I go along, and hopefully it becomes cohesive. I went ahead and got started working on the squares while rewatching Everything. Watching it made me miss my curly hair a bit, even though I just got my hair straightened the day before. Like, I like my hair straight now, but I can see myself getting tired of it after a couple of days. Here is my first basic square. I literally have no idea what to do with these color combos. I'm literally choosing as I go along. So I feel like some of them are just going to be kind of basic, but the main thing is like how they all go together. So even though like, oh, this isn't bad. I'm not saying this is like bad or ugly. I like it. But like if the whole thing was like this, that would be cute too. All right, I don't know what I'm saying anymore. I'm just gonna keep working on them. But yeah, this is the first square that I've done. I'm gonna figure out how many I need to do, but I'll put it on here on how many squares that I'll need and you'll need if you want to do something like this. For the amount of squares I need, I first measured my first granny square, which came out to be 5.5 by 5.5 inches. I then measured my shoulders as well as how long I wanted the sweater to be. I want my sweater to go off my shoulders a bit before the arm start, so I took my original shoulder measurement of 17 and pushed it up to 27. If I divide 27 by 5.5, it gives me 4.9, and rounding that up means that I need to do 5 squares for each row. I then did my sweater length measurement by 5.5, which gave me 4.5, and that number tells me that I need 5 squares in each column. I then did 5 times 4, which gives me a total of 25 squares for the front panel. The back panel is going to be the exact same as the front, so that will be made with 25 squares as well. For the arms, I measured my arm circumference, which was 10 inches, and then did the math, which gave me 2 squares per row, but I didn't want it to be tight, so I brought the amount up to 3 squares. Then for the length of the sleeves, I decided to do 3 squares down. 3 times 3 is 9, and then if I do 9 for each arm, that's 18. So in total, I need 68 squares. For the rest of the day, I worked on the squares, making sure to take frequent breaks since my hands were pretty messed up from my previous projects. I said I was going to take a long extended break, but I literally can't do that. It's really boring if I do. Hello, it is the next day, and I finished a total of 32 squares yesterday. Some of the colors are a bit iffy. Like, I just worked with whatever I grabbed from the closet. Like, I have way more yarn in the closet, but I didn't want to like take it all out, and then I'm like, okay, let me figure out the colors. So I just grabbed the colors that stood out to me the most and then tried to figure it out from there. So I have like this Barney looking square. I have this solid orange square. I have this one, and then like blue. Like, I tried to keep it pretty cool toned besides the orange. And there are some lighter tones like this one and these with the gray. But once I'm done with all the squares, I'm gonna strategically place them so that they all complement each other. And right now I have enough to make the front panel. So I'm just gonna do some repeats of these so I can make the back panel and then put them together. And then I'm gonna place them on me to see how many squares I would need to do for the arm so that it's long enough, but not to the point where it's like oversized. So yeah, that's what I'll be doing today. I just finished all of the squares as well as the squares for the back panel too. And I also rearranged them in the order that I think looks the best for the front. I'll probably play around with that, but now I'm just gonna go ahead and attach it with slip stitches, going from side to side and then going from bottom to top. To attach the squares, I first turned them inside out so that the slip stitching would be seamless and then lined up the first 2 rows. I then took the first row and the second row's squares and began to attach them from the left, adding 1 slip stitch into every stitch until the end. Once I reached the end, I took the next square on the bottom and went into it, and then the second square on the top as well, and continued my slip stitching like so. I then repeated this throughout the entire row and the rest of the rows as well. Once all the rows were attached, I repeated this to attach each column to each other, and then the front panel squares were all attached. It got pretty dark yesterday, so I couldn't record finishing the panel, but I finished the front and the back. Here is the panel. This is what the front and the back panels look like. And when I put it to my chest and hold my arm out, this is where it stops on my arm. So to figure out how many squares I would need for my arms, I just take my measuring tape and measure from that square to around my wrist. And so from there to my wrist, it says it's 14 inches. And if each square is 5.5 inches, that means I would need about 3 squares in one column going down. So it will be like 1, 2, 3, and it'll be slightly big, but that's okay because I want it to be slightly oversized. And then for how many squares I need to go around, my arm circumference was either 10 or 11, so I'll probably need I'll probably do 3 just to make it like comfortable. But I'll do 2 first and then see how it is. And then if I want it to be looser or more oversized, then I'll just go ahead and make like 3 extra squares really quickly. So I'm gonna do 3 down and 2 across. So 1, 2, 3. So that's 6 on each arm that I'm gonna do. And if 6 is not enough, then I'm gonna make 9. Right now it's like 7 p.m. and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I've only gotten 9 squares done. Mainly because I just had to keep taking multiple breaks. But I am enjoying some samosas while I work, and I'm rewatching High Fidelity for the 80th time. And yeah, that's what I'm doing. I'm gonna finish all of the squares for both arms tonight, and then tomorrow I'll put them together. So I'll see you tomorrow. Here is the arm panel. I just attached them 3 in a row and 3 in each column. And this is what it looks like. So to put everything together, I'm first gonna take the front panel and place it on my shoulders. And then I'm gonna see like where my neck and my head like will fit. So I'm thinking like about where these corners are would be a good place. So I'm just gonna add some stitch markers right there so I remember where that is. And then I'm gonna go ahead and slip stitch the front and the back panels together. Once the panels are aligned, start slip stitching them together from one side until you reach the stitch marker stitch. Then slip stitch into that stitch, chain 1, cut the yarn and pull to secure, and remove the stitch marker. Then you're gonna do the same for the other shoulder, making sure to keep the middle space open for your head. This is what the sweater's looking like with the shoulders attached. It is the length that I wanted it to be, and it is very easy to slide over my head. So I think the amount that I chose to keep it open was literally perfect. So now all I have to do is attach the arms. Attach your arms by marking the middle of the arm with a stitch marker and then attaching that stitch marker to the in-between of both panels on the side. Then if you want, you can use more stitch markers to mark the rest of the arm to the panels to make sure it's aligned. After, slip stitch the arm to the front and back panels. So if you can tell, I messed up. This is the wrong side and this is the right side, and if I flipped it to the right side, then the wrong side of this will show. So now I have to take the arm off that I just showed you how to do, and then take off the shoulders and redo this again. Thankfully, putting the sweater together doesn't take a long time. So once I fixed everything and the arms were attached, I folded the sweater in half and added stitch markers to the armpit and then down the sides of the sweater and arms to make sure it's all aligned. I then slip stitched the side of the body of the sweater in the arms until everything is closed appropriately. Then repeat this on the other side and the sweater is almost complete. After, I pulled the sweater right side out and then began working single crochet borders on the bottom of the sweater and the arms in whatever color I chose, just to give it more of a finished look. For this, I did 2 rows. Then after, I weaved in my ends and the granny square sweater was complete. Here is the first scrap yarn project all completed, and I'm not really sure just how much I like it. In terms of it being like a scrap yarn / yarn buster project, I think this is one of the best ones, because you can literally use whatever yarn you have and make a whole bunch of granny squares, put it together, and then call it a day. The way that I put the squares together kind of made me not really like it. I kind of got lazy and just did slip stitch, which is fine, but it makes the sides of the square kind of bulky, like if you can see on this close-up right here. But besides all that, it's a really relatively easy project to make with your extra yarn. For the last project in this video, I was thinking, since I have a lot of chunky yarn, particularly weight 5, that I would do something with all of these instead of all of the other weight 4 yarn. I was thinking of doing a patchwork cardigan with just these different colors, and I kind of arranged them in the order of how I'd want the squares to be. So I kind of want the colors to go from dark to light to dark to light. I have so many of these and I kind of just want to use as many colors as possible just to see what it'll look like. So I'm not planning the color scheme at the moment. I'm just gonna go ahead and choose whatever colors I feel like choosing. I was thinking of adding this one in there too, just to spice it up, but I feel like this color might be a bit too strong, but just in case, I'll have those. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and see how this turns out. To start the back panel, I cast it on 70 and worked 3 rows of knit 1 purl 1 with this green bubble yarn. For this, I used 9mm needles. After the 3 rows of rip stitch, I attached my first color by slipping it onto my needle and then worked 17 knit stitches with it. After the 17th stitch, I attached my second color the same way I did the first and worked 17 more rows. After a total of 4 colors, I turned my work and worked with the color I worked with previously until I reached the next color. To switch colors, if you're on a purl row, just bring the new color yarn under the old color and then purl normally with the new color before working the rest of the stitches as normal. For the knit row, all you have to do is bring the new color yarn under the old color yarn and then knit normally before working the rest of the stitches as normal. After 18 rows, I switched to my second set of colors using the same color switching techniques. It was incredibly simple and quick to finish the back panel within a couple of hours, and for the colors, I just randomly chose them based on how they'd fit with the colors below them. For the front panels, I cast it on 30 and repeated the steps for the ribbing and the first set of squares, but instead of 4 colors, I used 2 and switched the color after the 15th stitch. Once I finished both panels, I aligned them with the back panel and attached them together. Once that was finished, I went ahead and got started on the arms. Off camera, I already did the first arm and attached it, halfway at least, and I'm really liking my idea of using a solid color for the arms when the rest of the cardigan is patchwork. I don't know why when I switch the colors it does this. It does this on every project that I switch colors on like this, and I'm not sure why that happens. But for the arms, I thought of using this really cool textured yarn, and I thought for the other arm, since one, I don't have this color anymore and basically ran out when I was doing this one, I'm gonna use the green version on the other side just to give it more personality and to kind of be similar to this one. And I think it'll look really cute. For the arms, I casted on 30 and worked 2 rows of rib stitch, then made sure to increase into every 4th stitch for 2 knit rows before working a total of 38 rows of stockinette stitch. Once the arms were complete, I went ahead and attached them onto the sweater, and then it was done. I don't go too in depth with how I made the cardigan here, but if you want a more detailed tutorial, I have a knit cardigan tutorial video linked in the card above. That's great for beginners. Here is the next project all completed, and I have to say this one turned out way better than I thought it was gonna come out. I was struggling a bit with how I wanted to really put the colors together, but when I started I was like, I'm just gonna grab random colors and then put them together like that and call it a day. For the arms, I knew I didn't want them to be color blocked like the rest of the cardigan, so I just did 2 separate colors on each side with this textured yarn, and I absolutely really loved the sleeves. For a lot of my knit pieces, I've realized that I've been using the same cast off edging for probably every single project, no matter like what the project is. And because of that, sometimes the edging won't look good. Like for this one, it looks okay because you can't really see the edging all that well due to the type of yarn that I use. But for a lot of the projects that I've done in the past, I ended up not liking them as much as I could have if I were to use the right edging. So I decided to take a class on Skillshare called Edgy Stitch Kit, which has been teaching me how to do different edgings, and practicing them on different swatches has been really fun so far. The class taught me how to do an E-cord cast off, and right now I'm kind of working on the tubular cast off as well. You can find this class and many similar ones on Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives like you and me, with thousands of classes led by professionals across illustration, photography, music, and more. No matter what you're trying to learn, whether it be as a hobby or your career, Skillshare has the right classes for you. You can use Skillshare to invest in yourself and your goals by starting a learning journey to take your creative passion or project to the next level. Skillshare also offers learning paths, which are hand-picked classes that are meant to be taken in order that build on one another, which reinforces the lessons you're taking. They're available in a range of experience levels from beginner to advanced and a variety of categories. One learning path I'm excited to try is the Self-Care Essentials, which helps you with a ton of self-care techniques and shows you how to nurture yourself as well as grow more into who you are and who you want to become. The best part about all of this is that the first 500 people to use my link will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Thank you so much to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Here is all of the colors that I'm thinking of using for this cardigan here. The only thing I'm a bit worried about is the purple. This is all of the purple that I have found in my closet, and the one that looks most like the photo, thankfully I have 3 of them. But just in case, like for any of the stripes, if I want to save some of the purple yarn for like the most important parts like the sleeves and the collar, then I would replace it with the black. And I feel like using black for some of these stripes won't be that big of a deal. So yeah, with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. The cardigan is a basic crocheted piece, but I'm not too sure of the stitching just yet, so I'm probably gonna break down what I do as I go along. It does look like it uses a lot of either half double crochet or double crochet and skipping stitches to make the gaps look the way that it does, kind of like mesh stitch. It also has a double crocheted collar and a purple border around the edges, as well as 2 double crochet pockets. It seems easy, so I'll go ahead and take on this challenge. I first started with the back panel, which I chained 87 with the purple yarn for. Measuring it out came to be 41 inches when stretched and 35 to 36 inches when not. After, I worked 2 rows of double crochet to begin the base of the back panel. At the end of the row, I switched to my mustard color and then turned my work. For this row, I chained an extra chain and then skipped the first stitch. Then in the second stitch, I worked 3 half double crochets. After the third half double crochets, I chained 1 and skipped the next stitch before working 3 half double crochets into the stitch after the one I skipped. I repeated this for the entire row. On the next row, all I did was add a single crochet into the first stitch, then the middle stitch of the 3 double crochets, then into the gap that the chain from the last row made, and repeated this down the row. I didn't know what I was actually doing. I just guessed the stitches as I went and tried to make it as close to the original as possible, but after spending the rest of the day figuring out how to do the stitches correctly and starting over at least 6 times, I think I finally got the pattern down. Here is how much I've gotten done so far. It took me so many tries to figure out the pattern. It looks like it's simple, but I don't know, when I was trying to figure it out, it was just hard for some some reason, mainly because I would mess up and the part would kind of hourglass, and it kind of looks like this bottom part is bigger than the rest of it, which is kind of true because I was at first doing single crochets and half double crochets, but then in the later half I switched to only using half double and double. So basically I showed how to do the first couple of rows, which is basically 2 rows of double crochet with the purple, and then with the yellow, mustard yellow, I did 3 half double crochets into every other stitch. And then after I did a row of single crochet with the purple, and then after that I did 1 double crochet into 1 stitch and then chained 1, skipped the next stitch and then worked another double crochet in the next stitch, and then repeated that, chaining 1, skipping 1 stitch, double crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet. And then for this little cluster right here, I just did 2 half double crochets into each chain gap that was done when you did the double crochets. And then to make it look like these little clusters are trapped underneath, all you do is double crochet into the double crochet from the row before you did the clusters, and then add another double crochet into the next double crochet. And then after that I did 2 half double crochets, and then in the next row I started off by doing, in the first 2 stitches I would do 1 double crochet into each, and then a chain 1, and then repeat, and then skip a stitch, and then repeated that, working 1 half double crochet into the next 2 stitches, and then chain 1, skip the next stitch and repeat it. And then the row after that I did 1 single crochet into every stitch. And then after that part, that's when I kind of figured out the pattern that's going on. So basically on one row you're going to do 1 full row of half double crochets. At first I was doing a single crochets, but then I changed to half double crochets. If you want to do single crochets, that's fine, but basically all I did was for 1 row you do a half double crochet into every stitch. As you can see here, I worked into the gaps as well. And then in the row after that, I did, in the first 2 stitches, do 1 double crochet into each stitch, and then chain 1, skip the next stitch, and repeat this, working 1 double crochet into the next 2 stitches, chain 1, and then skip the next stitch. And then repeat that back and forth, basically doing the next, and then the next row after that is a entire row of half double crochets into every stitch, and then you just continue that all the way up, except for the little sections that have these cluster sections, which is the one that I was talking about here, where you first where you do the 2 half double crochets into every other stitch, and then you do a double crochet into the previous double crochet. And for this part right here, like this was the only one that I did with half double crochet, and then if you can see up here, this is the exact same thing, but the only difference is that I did it with double crochet instead, and it's a solid color, so it's not showing these clusters like it would. But yeah, that's essentially all I'm doing for this sweater. I'm just going back and forth, repeating it, making sure to follow the picture, and just making sure that all of the colors are exactly the same, and I'm making the stitches as close to the one in the photo as possible. Working on the rest of the back panel was a breeze, though it was still a slow process since I was making sure I was doing everything correctly. While I did this, I began watching Avatar for the first time. It's pretty cool so far. Sokka is kind of annoying, but other than that, the way the first episode ended had me really hooked. Here is the final back panel that I finished, as well as a front panel that I did, and it was a little bit tricky to figure out how big or how wide the front panel should be, since like if you divide the chain for the back panel and do that for both of the panels, there won't be any space in the middle for the button band. So I decided to make it a chain of 38, and I was just playing around with it, like making the first 2 rows of double crochet that I did for the back panel, and then placing it on the back panel and then marking where it would lay, and then do the same on the other side, and that gives me enough space to have the button band expand on both sides and then still be able to like button it comfortably and stuff. But the other thing with that is also the fact that sometimes my tension is off. So as you can see right here, unstretched, it stops right here, but for this front panel it actually stopped right here. And with this project, what I'm noticing is that my work keeps hourglassing. Like it'll be small and then you can see it gradually goes in and then out and then in and then out again. And the only reason I'm okay with that is because I'm gonna add a border to it and like fix it up a little bit. But doing that makes it like go way in and then way out. So it's a little, this cardigan's a little bit tricky. It's because of the stitching that I'm doing. And that's another reason why I'm not going too into depth with it, because I don't want to tell you, oh, you have to do this to make something, and it doesn't come out the way that you want, you know? Like this is my first time doing this, but this is still a cool project to do if you have all this scrap yarn. And if you don't want to do these intricate stitchings, you could always just make it a striped cardigan and call it a day. So I'm just gonna go ahead and continue working on the front panel and then later attach them on the top and go from there. After I finished both of the front panels, I made sure that the right side of the back panel was facing up and then the wrong sides of the front panels were facing up so that everything will face correctly after seamed together. Then I went ahead and seamed the front panels to the back panels until there were 10 stitches left over. After, I flipped it right side out and began to create the collar section of the cardigan, which I did 9 rows of double crochet for. For the button band, I first started on the left side of the cardigan and added 1 slip stitch into every area I could until I reached the top where the collar was. At the top, I chained 1 and turned my work. Then into the first 5 stitches, I worked 1 single crochet into each slip stitch. It was a bit tricky since the slip stitches were tight, but once I finished stitch 5, I chained 1 and skipped the 6th stitch before working a single crochet into the 7th stitch. Doing this creates a gap for the buttons I'll attach later on. Then I continued working single crochets down for 9 stitches. After the 9th stitch, I chained 1 and worked into the 11th stitch, creating another buttonhole. I repeated this every 9th stitch for 3 more times to have a total of 6 buttonholes. On the last row of the button band, I worked a single crochet into every stitch, even the chains that I skipped a stitch with prior. Then I repeated everything on the other side of the band, just without the buttonholes. The last thing I had to do was make the arms. For the arms, I chained 46 and did 1 row of single crochet before beginning this same pattern I was doing for the rest of the cardigan. While I did this, I continued watching Avatar, which I'm actually starting to fall in love with. Aang is so cute and funny, and Sokka has actually grown on me. I absolutely loved the Kyoshi, and I hope they come back because they were my favorites so far. Once the arms were complete, I sewed them on the way I did the granny square sweater, which took forever, by the way. But once it was done, I weaved in all my ends and got started on the pockets. For the pockets, all I did was chain 32 and double crocheted for 12 rows. While I was working on the second pocket, I got so scared I was gonna run out of the purple. Like, I'm so close to finishing this last purple thing that I need, and it's almost running out. Thankfully though, I finished with a bit to spare, but not enough to do a border on the pockets. I cut a long tail and then used the tail to sew the pockets onto the front of the cardigan. The last thing that I need to do is add 5 buttons onto the cardigan. And I have a ton of buttons. Some of them I purchased and others are from my grandma's friend who gave me a bunch of buttons. There's a lot to choose from, but I'm gonna try and find some small ones. 1, 2, 3, 4. Alright. I feel like I might just use these because I have 5 of them. But I'm gonna look through to see if I have any that are similar to the ones on the website. After choosing the buttons, I sewed them onto the button band right across from each of the buttonholes I made, and once they were all sewn on, my Unif Cardigan replica was complete. Here is the last piece that I made, which is based off the cardigan from Unif. This is definitely my favorite from all of the projects that I've done so far, and it's very cozy. The length is to my thighs, and it's pretty different from the one on the model. Like, the pattern and the colors are exactly the same, but I realized that they probably used weight 3 yarn instead of weight 4. And then there's also the fact that it says that the model is 5'8" and I'm 5'6", so that probably has something to do with why this came out longer than how it looks on the model. Like, I stopped right here on this green section, but there was more colors after this, and if I were to continue to do that, this probably would have been almost to my ankles. But I actually really love how the length is. I love how it fits, how it lays. It's literally perfect, to me at least. And it looks like it could have been a hoodie. Like, if it had a hood, it would have been pretty fire. But I didn't make one. I should have, but I wanted it to be exactly like the one on Unif. But yeah, I really like this. The only thing that kind of gets on my nerves though is the fact that the weavings tend to poke out, but that's me not knowing how to weave correctly, so it's not on the sweater or anything. But yeah, I'm really happy with how it came out. It's definitely my favorite piece, and it fits into a lot of my wardrobe, so I'm gonna be wearing this a lot. I hope all of the projects in this video inspired you in some way, shape, or form. I have a couple other ideas for projects for like home decor and accessories, so I'm really excited to put those out at some point in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!